folks. Welcome to another episode of 10 Laws with East Forest podcast. This week, my guest is Mikey Siegel. You might have heard me talking about him on weeks prior. That's because I've been up at Esalen a couple times working with him on his group flow project and out at his place in Silicon Valley. And his group flow project is sort of a biofeedback project with a group, obviously, 24 people currently, who are all wired up so we can get biofeedback about their heart rate, their breath. I think other things are starting to play around with brain waves and emotional response and things like this. And that comes back at the user in creative ways via sound in headphones, via sound on a PA, and also currently with like a little light in front of them. That's sort of a multicolored light that, for instance, like your heartbeat, you might hear your heartbeat represented as your actual heartbeat in your headphones. You can see it perhaps on your light, or you might hear it through the PA, through the subwoofer, which is a pretty profound experience. But then you might do exercises that we could develop. It's a very malleable system where you could be with a partner and you're looking in their eyes and you're holding your own light, which is your heartbeat, and you could pass it to your partner, and now you hear in your headphones their heartbeat, or you could hear a merging of both your heartbeats. So you basically can do whatever you want with this sort of data and biofeedback information and create different experiences with groups. So Mikey, I just got back from Esalen. I was there with Rada, a.k.a. Marissa Wepner. She came along too, and Mikey has a residency at Esalen, which is a pretty cool thing that they're doing, giving him a month to develop his work and bring in lots of different collaborators and just kind of like see what works. So I dropped in for a couple days and basically was providing a musical journey against the backdrop of these different breath and heartbeat experiences. And I had a controller where I could turn on and off individual person's heartbeats into the PA and volume levels. And then I also changed the sound of, for instance, with the heart rate, their heartbeat sound turned into different nature field recordings. So like your heart could become a frog. And then against the backdrop of this live music, sort of like my East Forest ceremony music, their heartbeat as a nature sound is fitting into that backdrop as nature, which has a whole nother layer of meditative and emotional value. So that's sort of one of the things that Mikey is up to. He's been a real busy guy doing lots of talks all around the world and has a really unique perspective on how technology can be harnessed to essentially deepen our human experience and increase empathy and increase connection with other people. And as anyone who's listened to this podcast knows, I'm probably not as that. I'm a bit more skeptical and thinking more about technology as a mechanism that tends to inherently pull us away from our sense of what it means to be human in the world, and something, at least from my own experience, that it increases the sense of separation between ourselves and nature, between ourselves and beingness. And that's something that is sort of a fundamental change that's been going on in humanity in the last, since the iPhone came out. So that was about 10 years ago. I think we might talk about this a bit in the podcast, but it's a big deal. But I also share a common thread with Mikey that I'm very interested in how technology can be used as a positive tool to do just what he wants to do. So we actually have the same goal and the same interests. He's just a bit more of an optimist, and that's fantastic. I wish I was too. The technology I'm using is more music and even ceremony, the ritual, or any ritual we do, but the ritual we bring into these East Forest ceremony concerts is a form of technology, just as basic ceremony has been for millennia. So we have a lot of common threads there, and actually, he and I would rap about this offline a lot, and I was just like, we should really get on the podcast, and I'd love to dig into these subjects a bit more and get his point of view. So I think you will enjoy this. And Mikey, this was recorded probably, I think a month ago or something, but I just saw him a few days ago. I know he's going through a lot of changes in his life, and so you can check out his website to see what he's up to or where he's going to be and all that kind of stuff if you want it to be extra current. But speaking of Esalen, there is a new retreat that has been added, 2 of them. One's pretty far off in June of 2019, but there's one coming right up in November. It's the weekend before Thanksgiving. And this is going to be myself. It's the weekend before Thanksgiving in November. And this is going to be myself and Marissa Wepner. It's going to be there too. And it's going to be November 16th through 18th. So it's a Friday to Sunday out at Esalen. If you haven't been there, it's one of the most beautiful places on the planet. They have hot springs coming out of the side of the cliffs that fill up these amazing hot tubs dangling over the ocean. And these beautiful lawn landscapes and a pool and wonderful vegetarian food and quaint housing of all different shapes and sizes. There's bunk rooms and then super private, beautiful spots. So varying price ranges for you to look at. But this will be a weekend of exploring how music can be used as a tool to bring us closer to ourselves. And we'll be doing this through different modalities of movement and meditation, co-collaborative experiences involving nature and active listening. Should be really fun. It's a bit of an experiment, but it also just be very restorative any way you look at it. So there's more information about that at eastforest.org/retreat. And then just in a couple weeks now, we've got the East Forest Retreat in southern Utah, in Boulder, Utah, which is my hometown. And that's coming right along. I think we might have just 2 spots left. I don't think I'm going to open it up beyond that because I kind of like a particular group size. But if you're really feeling the call, jump on that because we might, only if there's like the perfect extra 3, 4, 5 people, we're like, all right, I gotta open this up because I really do believe that the people who are supposed to be there are there. You know, these experiences are as much about synchronicity and allowing what is than anything else, and it's very much about place. So if the place is calling you, come on out, but we look forward to having you. But I'm coming to you today from Joshua Tree, California. I just wrapped up a very short mini tour in California, Southern California, doing a few East Forest ceremony concerts, and I feel recharged with this stuff. I feel renewed. The Esalen part was in that too, but we also were in San Diego and Santa Barbara. I just want to thank Yoga Soup and Trilogy Sanctuary for hosting me and sharing this with your community. It's just, I'm just really appreciating being able to try something that I know is different. And just for some people, it's a bit of a lift to be like, what are we doing? And I'm like, look, it's basically a concert where you get to lie down, and there's some elements of meditation. But beyond that, there's something special going on, and it's evolving in my heart and in my mind. And every time I get to do one of these, it helps me to try different things and tweak the process, all with the intention of really working to find how can we make a reliable and repeatable religious, shall I say, or spiritual or mystical experience that's something, the kind of doorway that anyone could walk through, and the kind of experience that is free of any dogma, that you can't argue with it. And I mean that the words and the messages and the techniques we're using are universal, and we're talking about you and empowering you and your mind and your body and your intention. I'm not necessarily saying it's about interdimensional beings or, part of the furthest I go is to talk about your soul, but I'm really trying to find something that can help plant seeds in our beingness and find an evening of relaxation and rejuvenation, restoration, to find those parts of yourself, your intuitive knowledge, these are all just things I want to tap into myself. And so all these different techniques and experiments are different ways of me exploring my own psyche and my own heart to just live in this strange experience of consciousness with more grace. So with that note, let's get into this conversation with Mikey. Please do at some point take a moment to scroll down on your phone. I think if you go to like the main show page on your iPhone, if you're on the newest OS, you hit like all available episodes or something. I don't know, somewhere down, if you keep scrolling around, you'll see the rating system, and giving it a quick 5 stars, and even better, writing a little review makes a big difference. So that's a small effort you can make. Come on, just scroll on down, hit the 5 stars. It really helps other people who are digging around in the podcast world think about maybe giving this one a listen. And we're all just trying to create new stories out there. So thank you so much for doing that. There are some other dates coming up in Colorado in November and stuff. That's all at eastforest.org. And some new things being announced soon, blah, blah, blah. Let's get into this. This is Mr. Mikey Siegel. Hey, Mikey, thanks for coming on.
Hey, Trevor. It's my pleasure.
Where you been these days? Have you been to other countries and all around? I know you're a busy guy.
Actually, I just came from a festival that I think we both have some experience with, Beloved in Oregon.
Yeah. How was that this year?
It was amazing. My first time there, I had a chance to experience the very heart-centered, nature-oriented festival. Really beautiful people, beautiful music, and then give a talk and a workshop around technology, which I was a little nervous going into because it felt a little bit like a culture clash. But I guess probably what we'll be talking about a little today is that was kind of the theme of my talk. Also, was kind of the dancing of these two things together.
Culture clash because you felt like the vibe of that festival, or just like Oregon hippies, or I mean, it's the West Coast. It's still pretty tapped in.
Yeah, part of the culture clash felt like that people are there to connect with nature, and to kind of connect with their embodied experience, to connect with the sort of the flow of life. And it's this feeling that all of a sudden you show up and you start sort of talking about technology and science and sort of this futuristic visions for humanity, or at least if that's the idea of it, that there's a sort of a contrast there. There's a dissonance, and I guess to kind of jump right into it, it's interesting because as I'm saying it, I'm realizing like that's really, that dissonance is the thing that I'm basically playing with all the time. I was actually driving today in an Uber, and I was the woman who was driving the Uber asked me what I do, and I said something like I said something like merging spirituality and technology, something like that. And she stopped and she looked at me and she said, "I've never even considered that. That's such a weird concept. It's never even occurred to me."
She didn't think like you were talking about AI sex dolls?
I don't think she thought that. She ended up, she was a very religious Christian, actually.
Okay.
Which is kind of where she was coming from. And I guess my response to her was the fact that seems so dissonant is what gives purpose to what I do in the world.
Yes. It gives fuel for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, how's that going, merging spirituality and technology for you?
Yeah, it continues to be an interesting journey. And I guess just, I feel like I've sort of laid this sort of preface out without actually like saying what the thing is. So people are probably like, wondering what the hell I'm talking about.
Well, I'll give a bit of a preamble to this, I'm sure. And I've actually spoken a little bit about in other podcasts, because I think I recorded one when I was at your house, and I spoke a bit to what you were up to at that particular time. But there's sort of like the micros level of what you're actually working on. And then there's the macro level of like these philosophical ideas of like, why is this even the case at all, you know?
Right.
And they're both interesting things to talk about. And I talk a lot about and think a lot about technology and the ways that it's changing society and the ways that it is really enrapturing our minds and our attention. And I know you have a bit more of a optimistic view than I've had in the past. And so that's something I'm really interested in. And I'm, So anyway, what would you like to say before I get too much in the weeds, if anything?
Yeah, I love the weeds. You mean just in terms of a kind of giving more grounding to kind of who I am and what we're talking about here?
Yeah. I think I'm sure that would be helpful. You don't need to feel like you have to cover your whole work and your life, but just a little background.
I think just in terms of a short intro to kind of just give some grounding to what I've been alluding to. I liked the framing that we had in the workshop that we did together at Esalen.
Yeah.
And the framing for that was first a reminder that every single part of the technology that's around us comes from the earth.
Right. Like everything's made from the earth, literally everything. Everything
is made from the earth.
Including us.
But some things that are made from the earth, we call natural, and some things we think of as unnatural. And I think that's a really interesting distinction. And probably at the top of the list of the things that seem unnatural are, like our phones and our computers, right. and yet, when birds build birds' nests or bees build beehives or termites build termite mounds, we don't think of those as unnatural. And my sense is that what we're feeling is that there's a way in which we're creating out of harmony with life's natural rhythms. And that this modern technology that we've created is created from, I guess, you could say, a different kind of connection or a different kind of intelligence or a different kind of consciousness than in the animal kingdom where like birds' nests come from, or even in the human kingdom where like art and music come from, where poetry comes from, where dance comes from, right? And the technology is sort of coming from not entirely, but can be coming from a different place. And sort of we feel that. And so in our workshop, the exploration was, how can technology actually be sacred? How can technology actually be a tool to support the deepest, most sacred kinds of human experiences? And humans have been building sacred objects for millennia to support a spiritual experience. So why can't a modern technology play that role as well? And that's what I'm really interested in. And I would take it a step further. I would say, if we don't begin designing modern technology with more heart, more wisdom, a deeper sense of the interconnectedness of all things, then we're going to be really digging ourselves into a hole as a humanity, because the technology is playing such a profoundly influential role. And that influence is going to go one way or the other.
Do you think it could be a simultaneous thing? I mean, for instance, we're already in a hole of sorts. Mm-hmm. And here we are using this technology to do this podcast and it's going to go through their phones, 90% of people to listen to it. And so we have this sort of positive meme on one hand, and then on the other meme, that same tool, the phone, is used for distraction or messing with their brains in ways they're not totally conscious of. These tools being used simultaneously for different polarities of energy and how it's helping our society or hindering it.
Yeah.
Do you see it like a scale almost? I mean, do you see it like we need to just have more of the other?
Yeah. To be honest, I really see it I see it as more a complex fabric of human expression.
Mm-hmm.
And I it's easy to simplify things and to say things are good and things are bad and watch out, dangerous
Mm-hmm.
times are coming. But actually, technology for me, what we call modern technology, is actually part of a sort of a seamless weave of human expression that includes all that we do as humans, from language to music to dance to politics to all of these ways that we express as humans. And technology is a particular kind of space of that expression.
Yeah, it's a form of expression. Yeah,
it's a form of expression that's largely based in a scientific worldview. And that scientific worldview has a lot of advantages and benefits to it. It's gotten us to the moon. It allows for incredible innovation and progress in some ways, but it also has certain downsides and limitations. It has, for example, at its heart, a fundamental view that the role of humans is to control and dominate nature, rather than a view of being part of an interconnected relationship with nature. Or it has a fundamental sense of the separation between subject and object, that there's a me that's fundamentally separate from this observed reality. And so there are a number of these assumptions that I think end up manifesting or playing into the way the technology is designed and the way the technology influences us. But I think beyond that, even in a more subtle way, you have a lot of a modern tech industry that in a lot of cases, not all cases, I don't even know what percent, is driven by greed, is driven by a desire for control, is driven by putting greater value on sort of the objectifying of people as ways to harness value and resources, rather than actually caring for their well-being.
I mean, I guess it sort of comes down to having shareholders that you're beholden to and being beholden to making profits to them. And when you do that, then it's just like screen time equates with advertising, which equates with profits. And then it just becomes a game of attention and a game of smoke and mirrors in a way. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I mean, what ways for you do you find that you're able to, I mean, I'm sure this is a struggle you work with on your own. You're a busy guy and I'm a busy guy. And it's like, how do you find that you're able to use the technology in a way that brings you closer to spirit? And what are the ways that it doesn't? I mean, beyond the obvious, like, you're just like, is it about creating space? Is it about, I know you've done a lot of work with biofeedback. It's about like getting closer to your internal experience. What is it for you?
So I want to answer that in two ways. One, a kind of a bolder way to say that I certainly don't feel, for the most part, like technology plays that role for me in my life. I really look forward to a future that, for me, we've barely scratched the surface of,
right,
where technology is like nothing we've ever imagined, and is playing that role. And so, like, when I'm connecting to a deeper experience, I'm doing the things that we all do. I'm dancing and I'm meditating and I'm doing that kind of stuff. That said, a lot of my time is spent thinking about and designing and building technologies and helping other build technologies that are trying to get there, that are trying to get closer. And, I can talk a little bit about the Group Flow project that we collaborated on. And for me, that's the closest I've been able to get to thinking about right now in this moment what a technology might look like that's really designed to connect us more deeply to ourselves and each other. And this is a platform that can support up to 24 people connected to sensors that measure the heart and the breath and turn that into sound and light and music. And the technology's role there really is to help us build a deeper relationship with not only our own heart and our own breath, but the hearts and breaths of the other people in the group. And ideally to help to create a kind of a synchronized fabric of experience. And so, we do things like, as you know, Trevor, like people doing meditations where they're actually connecting to their own heartbeat while actually hearing their own heartbeat through their headphones, and then holding their heart in their hand as a pulsing light, and then turning to their neighbor, and then all the while guided by a meditation teacher, trading actual pulsing hearts, and then actually having the sound swap, so they're actually hearing each other's hearts and making eye contact and creating this very humanizing experience using technology, which can often be dehumanizing. But also, I thought that the experiences that we created together at Esalen through your music were amazing. Do you want to describe?
Well, we basically added the layer of music, and not just music, but live music that's being created in the moment and using all these different heartbeats as instruments in a sense, and then adding in that layer, more layers of ritual and ceremony. So it's sort of the music is taking you on a journey, and you're hearing your own heart as sort of a musical element inside all that, and that's being played creatively, but hopefully deepening your spiritual experience. So, of course, I'm always a big proponent of how we all know how music can do that. That's how films work, right? Films without music, there's not a lot to them. It's hard to make a film with a real emotional arc without a musical score. And it's also the thing that takes it from a two-dimensional medium into a three-dimensional medium, because the sound is connecting the picture on the screen to your body, your ears, with sound waves. So, yeah, it was a really interesting experience doing that with you. It's kind of like a pretty in-depth way of doing biofeedback that's also very creative. How you could, use this system you made in a malleable way to like show people others' heartbeats or theirs, put it on the headphones, put it on the speakers. You could have the aggregate of all that information on a central globe of light that sort of is pulsing as people are syncing or not syncing. And so there's multiple levels of feedback they can receive. And that system you've created is group-based. I suppose you could do it as an individual too, but I think you think it's stronger as a group. And I think one of your interests is that, like how it enhances your connection with others. Is that right?
Yeah. I've just found for myself how important the interpersonal aspect of transformation and healing is. And I've spent a lot of time on my own spiritual path, sitting on a cushion, meditating, sort of doing the solo thing.
Right.
And, actually at Beloved, I had a really incredible journey. And I was on the dance floor and I was walking through the woods and all this stuff, but it was really a solo journey. And it was really very centered on my own experience. And I really needed that. It was really nourishing and it was really transformative. And at the end of the journey, I went and sat down with a very close friend and then my wife, Nora. And I was feeling a little uncomfortable. Like I wanted to kind of get back by myself. And I was exploring, why did I feel this discomfort? What was going on? And I sort of like leaned my head over on my friend. And then my friend sort of started kind of, stroking my hair and just started to have just some like intimate contact with a friend. And all of a sudden I realized, wow, I had been missing that whole dimension, that whole space of that intimate contact, and my whole body relaxed. My whole system, my whole nervous system started to what felt like a sort of dance with this other person, right? And started to change my breathing. And I started to find a sense of comfort and a sense of groundedness through that connection. And my feeling is like that whole space of how we connect and our resistances to connection and our discomfort around connection. It's not just about feeling good in a cuddle puddle, right? I mean, this is where global conflicts come from, right? This is why in Congress and in the United Nations it's difficult to get things done, right? I mean, this is why countries fight against each other. This is why neighbors fight against each other, right? We need to come together, not just in connection with ourselves, but to really find the way that we can come into connection with all of us as a humanity.
Yeah. Do you feel that there are blind spots that people have with the technology we're currently using en masse as like ways that maybe it's hindering that process?
My sense of the current technology landscape is, in many ways, it's catering to a large global addiction to distraction.
Distraction from what?
Distraction from our own felt experience.
Because felt experience is?
Because we're largely in pain. Mm-hmm. We're anxious. We're depressed.
Yes.
We're uncomfortable. We because we, to the large part, I'm going to generalize, don't have a loving and harmonious relationship with our own experience. We don't have a healthy relationship with ourselves. We experience, because of that, dissonance. We reject our emotions, right? We have constant negative thought patterns and self-criticism, right? We ignore our own felt experience. And so we'll do anything to not have to pay attention to that. You know, the alcohol industry and, large parts of the entertainment industry and the porn industry, so many industries are basically industries that have emerged to cater to our desire to constantly help us get away from our own felt experience, because our own felt experience kind of sucks. And for me, the tech industry is just a new way for us to do that. And it does it in a really effective way, because you can create these technologies that just can lock in and hold your attention in incredible ways. And not only that, there's a whole, as you mentioned earlier, attention economy, which has emerged now.
Yes.
Right? Where now you can also feed people advertisements and have all this, ways of controlling them in certain senses, influencing them, because you have a hold of their attention. And so it's this symbiotic relationship where we want to be distracted.
Right.
And there's a lot of profit to be made from that distraction.
Yeah. Are you worried about things like VR, or you think it's a non-starter? Do you think like that would make things magnified worse, or are you excited about it as a technology that you could use?
I'm excited about it as I am with all these things, because of its potential. So every time you get a bigger amplifier, which VR is like a bigger amplifier, it's probably one of the most powerful, what you might call attentional attractors, to ever exist, in terms of things that can really, compared to like an old radio, right? VR, it's like an atomic bomb in terms of its capacity to hold our attention, especially as it gets more realistic and more immersive. And so the ability to really perpetuate suffering in the world is even greater. And the ability to use that as a spiritual tool is even greater. Every single meditation technique ever invented is some strategy to shape and direct the quality of our attention. every single one, because we are what we attend to. And so VR is one of the most powerful attentional shapers or attractors that we've created as humans. Well, then it could be used as a meditation tool for that reason. But it has to be designed with that intention. And that's the missing ingredient we need. And this is kind of my soapbox. We need startups and companies and entrepreneurs and venture capitalists and a whole ecosystem to emerge, which is firmly rooted in the fundamental intention to support the well-being of humanity.
Do you think that there's money in that? Like, is that a motivating factor? We can monetize this side of things?
So it's a tricky thing. When your bottom line is just profit, even if you've got good intentions, but when your bottom line is profit, then the system will begin to shape around optimizing for profit. And it's probably not the case that the easiest way to make profit is also the easiest way to support well-being in the world.
As of
it's
now,
probably
yeah,
not.
Right.
So what you have emerging are new structures like B Corps and other types of structures where the bottom line also has social impact, where the investors actually sign on, including legal documents where they say, if you're not also optimizing for social impact along with profit, then you're actually failing. The company's a failure. And those are the kinds of new structures that are going to begin to change things. And we're seeing it. We're already seeing, in my little world that I live in, you've got, hundreds of millions of dollars now of funding that are dedicated just to these types of projects with these kinds of intentions.
But are people investing in that because of their conscience or because they see that as a smart investment financially? Like, do people make B Corps because their heart tells them to, or because it's actually a smart thing to do? It's like kind of green investment.
Yeah. So you see both, right? You see, of course, there's the whole greenwashing phenomena where you can make more money by being green. But I am seeing incredibly inspired human beings.
Yeah.
Who, as far as I can tell, are actually fully committed to using their resources for the uplifting and well-being of humanity. And now here's the cool thing. Probably the single most demanded thing on the planet is for us to actually come home to our own experience. Whatever you want to call that, happiness, well-being, reconnection, awakening, whatever you want to call it. But I think almost every human endeavor is some more or less unskillful attempt at that.
Yeah.
Right? Almost every human industry is ultimately just a veiled effort for us to actually be happy.
And they're selling authenticity and genuineness is what they're appearing to, or that's what people are very hungry for.
Right. And that's on the positive side of the rainbow, or they're selling porn or drugs or whatever.
The consumer is looking for an authentic experience, even if they're doing it in a really backwards way. Right.
So you have the explicit self-help, spirituality, yoga. You have those industries that are whether it's actually explicit, where they're actually kind of looking for it. But I guess just to say, like, the potential for that industry is so huge that there's like so much money to be made. And from my view, like, the best way that I could imagine people making money is where the more profit you make, the better off the world is. Mm-hmm. And if every business in the world could be structured in that way, where the greater the profit, the better off the world is, well, then industry becomes a world-saving structure, right? And but it's only when you have what some people call an extractive economy, where the more money that is made, the more value is actually removed from the system. That's where these sorts of industries are actually harmful to the planet. So what we need is to shift from an extractive economy to an additive economy, right? And you're already beginning to see these kinds of social impact endeavors and businesses and that kind of stuff, emerging.
You're saying within capitalism. I mean,
within capitalism.
Yeah, sort of within our current economic system, it's sort of changing the way we look at profit, I suppose. Or, I mean, you're right. I mean, if we commodify things, eventually you run out of things to commodify, or that becomes a problem. You know?
Right.
You know, and like you said, everything's made from the earth. At some point, you start running out of certain particular resources, which we're already seeing on some levels, or the waste of it, like taking into account the cost of the waste and recognizing that there's a limit to how much we can consume and create. But what do we do with the stuff? Again, it's still on our planet. Do you think it's something that would be driven by consumers, or is it going to be driven by visionaries who are creating and investing?
Well, it has to be both, right? But what you're already seeing is the emergence of, I've got where's the book sitting on my shelf? It's called, I think, the world of three zeros. By a Nobel Prize winning economist. And this is exactly what the book is about how do you create social impact business models, and tons of examples of them that are actually structured in this way. And I think that, someone like you, Trevor, I mean, this is in a way what you're doing, when you create music, right? And you're actually adding value to the world through the creation of your art. When you are actually making money from that, your profit is actually generated through an additive process, of actually improving people's lives and experience.
I guess it is nice to make something out of nothing, so to speak. I mean, yes, I buy instruments or whatnot, but at the end of the day, the constituent parts you're making new art out of, when it's somewhat digital, it kind of comes out of the ether, and then that's added into the world. And my interest has always been in creating genuine, repeatable spiritual experiences for people, and creating pause, creating sort of a crack in the armor of our hypnotized lives. And I like technological experiences that take me in that direction personally. Whether it's meditation things or sensory experiences, or I count music as technology, anything like that. I really value that kind of stuff. I mean, I think people are really hungry for experiences that create felt experiences for them, that enliven something and that feels dormant or not spoken to. And they're also looking for guides, because we're a country and a society that doesn't have a lot of wisdom like that anymore. And there's a lot of charlatans. There's a lot of false paths. And they're really looking for just simple wisdom or tools that actually work.
When I put my kind of ultra optimistic utopia hat on, and I imagine the future that I would love to see, that I want to support, it's where we really innovate on spirituality in a way that is truly holistic and integrated, and in harmony with the best interests and the deepest needs of human beings. Meaning, not in a way that's sort of superficial and harmful and just trying to make a buck, but I mean really taking the greatest roots of wisdom that exist as human beings, and combine that with the incredible capacities of science and technology, and say, how do we design the most advanced and supportive and universally accessible tools imaginable that we can make available around the world to anyone that needs them, so that the types of experiences that we both know and many of your listeners know are really the heart of what it means to be human.
Yeah.
Right? Getting the deepest essence of who and what we are. that those can be made more available. And what I'm interested in is really democratizing awakening, right? Where this is no longer something that is only available to those people that can, trek to India, or to, pay the money to find, have book, $100 an hour with a meditation teacher in California, or, that this is no longer some limited resource. But in the same way that a basic human right is to have access to food and water and housing, a basic human right is to have access to really advanced tools that support our interconnectedness. And how would the world change when all of a sudden we could support a massive global shift in consciousness?
How does the world become like hackers that do that? If like Anonymous shifted their energy to putting out like free open source tools that do this sort of thing. As opposed to like taking systems down, we're focused on like adding like a new, propagating this new energy into the world, as opposed to like always putting out fires.
And it's a natural progression too, because right now we're kind of coming out of the information age into the experience age. And in the information age, it was all about making information as freely accessible as possible. Any music, any video, any content you want on demand, through your phone, through your computer, any way you want, something that was unimaginable 20 years ago, right? And so a lot of what hackers have been doing is actually freeing information. Now, the experience age also has its own kind of sci-fi scariness to it, but also its incredible potential, which is experience on demand, right? What happens when you can put on a device and you can feel any way you want at any time in any place, right? So the implications of that are very sci-fi, and it's something that I think is inevitable. Because there's such a demand for it, and so it's inevitable that you're going to have technologies that are 1,000 times more addictive than heroin, right? That provide you with the same type of experience, but for even longer periods of time, and everything in between. But you're also going to have technologies that are going to be 1,000 times more potent than meditation. And there's actually a group working on a technology that's connected to our house and folks that are around. And I can't say too many details because there's some secret parts to it. But they're using ultrasound stimulation, and they're stimulating a specific part of the brain. And one of the visitors to my house recently is a well-known meditation teacher who probably a lot of your listeners would know, who I can't name, been teaching meditation and meditating for over 50 years. And he said that this technology, which he tried, was the single most potent intervention that he's ever tried in support of his meditative experience. And he said that the shift that he experienced from this technology was the equivalent of about 5 long meditation retreats. And he's overjoyed because from his view, he's a very progressive guy. From his view, this is just about making the experience more accessible. He's not a believer that there's some amount of trudging through the mud that you have to do to get there. And that's a common sentiment, right? That there's this sort of certain amount of suffering you have to experience before you can feel good. And I want to honor that because it's very common. It's one of the most common kind of resistances that I get. This sort of notion of shortcuts, right? This idea that we're sort of circumventing or bypassing some important process. And I kind of want to speak to that just for 1 second, because I bet most people are thinking that. And just to say that it's a very valid concern. And I think the fact that it's so common adds to its validity. Because this is one of the most immediate things that people feel like, wait a minute, like you're missing something. These are shortcuts. This is, something's missing. And my sense is that what people are worried about is that as we create these sort of new modern interventions, that we're going to be creating some new unforeseen harm. Some harm that didn't exist with these other more traditional approaches, you know? And I'll say that's almost guaranteed.
Yeah.
Right? Any new intervention is going to have its own downsides, right? But I also want to say that is part of the design process. And as long as the intention continues to be the best possible support of human beings that we can possibly muster, then when we notice that something's missing, or when we notice that there's some downside, then that immediately becomes part of the design process, and you refine the process. And it's, this has been happening for thousands of years, right? Countless Buddhist traditions, for example, have refined and updated and enhanced their own meditation maps when they observe, this meditation, this is where the students get stuck, right, in this meditation path. And so we have to create this new technique because they get stuck here, right? And so this has been part of spiritual traditions for thousands of years.
Yeah, I get worried that someone would, if anything gets very popular and profitable, that it'll be hard. Like, you could look at something like Facebook, for instance, which is a very powerful technology, and someone they could turn it around to somehow change the way their technology works so that it's actually instead of just pulling you down a rabbit hole, it's taking you in a different direction. Like, the design of it and the use of it as a technology somehow is increasing your sense of self and your felt experience, and you're becoming centered in your brain, how it's designed and how it works. And that would be really cool. I just worry, like you said, about greed. It seems like what we need is a fundamental shift in the tide of people's intentions, because we can make whatever we want. And I think you're absolutely right that we're going to have these tools that get more and more and more and more powerful. It just becomes what we choose to do with it. Are you concerned at all, or do you think about how AI could factor into this? Or I think we've spoken about this a little bit, and you're not a quote singularitarian. You don't believe that we'll create consciousness. There'll be a moment where it's truly a conscious, alive machine. It might mimic it to the point where it feels alive, but it's a different thing. And it could do things for us that are incredible. But how do you see that factoring into our future, which some say could be not that far away?
AI is a really important piece of this whole puzzle. And I think people are right to be reacting to it very strongly, one way or the other. Both directions, positive and negative, I think are both very justified. And for me, the biggest question that I have around the design of AI is who and why.
Yeah.
Right? Who's creating it, and for what purpose? And we create in our own image, right? We are what we build, and we build what we are. And AI will be one of the most potent examples of that. And there's a there's a project I'm advising, which actually just got written up in Forbes. I'm very excited. So check it out.
What is it?
It's called the Loving AI Project. And the goal of the project is to create an unconditionally loving artificial intelligence. And putting aside the question of what does that even mean? Is the AI itself loving? What does it mean to have the experience of love? Putting that aside for a second, even if it's just focusing on creating an AI which we experience as unconditionally loving, right? Even if that's the only goal, forgetting about whether or not it's conscious, for me, that's an imperative when we're talking about AI. And you look at this company, and they have baked into their founding team PhD neuroscientists and psychologists, meditation and spiritual teachers, and people that have even on the engineering side, had meditation and spiritual practice for decades. And these are people that are genuinely creating this AI system from a desire to see the connection and awakening of humanity. And I imagine them getting $500 million of funding. And then you take another AI company with equally skilled engineers whose bottom line is profit. And their CEO is some 32-year-old dude who, is insecure and is trying to prove himself and, hasn't worked out his mommy daddy issues and is just trying to essentially show that he can have the biggest AI company in the world.
Create a daddy.
And
daddy.
so, and so imagine the two companies creating an incredibly well-funded and incredibly powerful AI. Which AI would you rather have set free into the world?
Yeah, I think about DARPA and the military creating an AI, or China, or everybody else who's working on it too, and just, what that even means. I mean, some of this stuff is a bit beyond my pay grade. I just think about the idea of unleashing machines that make their own decisions on their own and can do that billions of times a second, and what that would even mean. And then you get into this stuff about like quantum computing, and it gets really crazy about the speed at which and what we can do. And that's now. And I don't even know where that'd be in 5 years, 10 years, let alone 20 years. So I love your optimism is infectious, Mikey, and I love it. And I love that you even dream, this wonderful side of it too. I go more into like more of a bit of the renunciate energy of saying, oh, I need to pull away from this and this, but these are the certain tools I need to use, and I'm trying to find a certain balance with it, and I have to balance that out with experiences in nature or with music, basically certain felt experiences that feel very primary as a way of refilling my own batteries. And I know that's something that's in my bones as a human being. And in some ways, the technological stuff is mimicking that, like the fact that we even build an AI that was looking for unconditional love to offer us. There's a part of me that's sad that none of us maybe have experienced that yet, or if we can. And so the ways in which that we're creating solutions out of our, disparate pains of being in modern life. And I wonder if it feels like Band-Aids as opposed to addressing the underlying cause. But you're right that the technology is not going away, and it's only getting more amazing and capable. And why not do interesting things with it?
I agree with you, and I want to make one last sort of plea, to you and your listeners as a kind of a slight shift on this perspective, this sort of Band-Aid perspective, and to say what the world needs is more and more created from a place of love and wisdom.
Yes.
And that's it. And so whether that's music or whether that's technology, when something is created from love, then it perpetuates love in the world. And so an AI created from love, all it is a technological song that is playing, that is an expression of the love of the engineers and the entrepreneurs that made it, right? And the purity of that song is dependent on the purity and depth of the love and the wisdom and the experience, the awakening of those that created it. The medium doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if it's a political system or a technological system. And so for me, the future I'm imagining is not one where sort of tech is kind of this thing that's kind of replacing nature, but when we're growing technology, right? When technology is emerging from the same natural intelligence that plants emerge from and is harmonized and living in an environment that is in a dance with the deepest aspects of our human experience and constantly in support and reinforcing that and helping to create a unified and interconnected experience for all humans, that's when we won't even make a distinction anymore between technology and nature.
Wow. That's awesome, man. I kind of want to end it on that sort of upbeat note. I mean, that's a vision for the future I'd love to hold on to, just one of integration and one where I think that's a key point, that when things come from love and they come from a place of wisdom, whatever it is you're doing, that's really what the world needs, whatever we're doing, technological or not. Yeah, I know it sounds simplistic, but it is simple. It might not be easy, but it's simple.
Yes. Thanks, Trevor.
Cool. I'll link you up in the show notes and stuff, but yeah, I enjoyed talking to you.
Thanks, Trevor. I always enjoy our conversations.
There you go, bud. There you go. Thank you, Mikey. Really appreciated having the time for that conversation. I appreciate everyone on this podcast who makes time to talk with me. You might notice that this has been lately a every 2 week thing, and that's just because I've been getting kind of busy. I'll stick to 2 weeks for sure. If I can do it every week when I can, I absolutely will. Part of it's just a issue of getting people recorded and stuff, but thanks for your understanding with that. I'm always open to guest suggestions if you want to send them my way. info@eastforest.org. You can also please just say hi, let me know you're listening. If you have any questions or comments, I'd love to hear them. Might read them on the air if they feel like they need to be read. This music that you're listening to is called and it's off an album that's only on my website. It's called Music Meditations. It's not one it kind of feels like an album of demos from way long ago in 2010. Actually, from a previous podcast I had that's not even up anymore, where I used to just do a improvisation. I called it Music Meditations. No, I called it Sound Healing Bites. I got up to 64 episodes, which means I did it about a year. But the best, or the ones I liked off that, became a little record called Music Meditations. And I remember being really unhappy with the mastering of it. But that's a whole nother thing. Just the guy I used, I always didn't like him. Didn't like what he did. So it's always kind of rubbed me the wrong way. And I never put it out on like Spotify or iTunes or anything like that. But some people really tell me, like Mikey, it's actually his favorite record. And I was like, are you serious? Wow. It's like, yeah, anytime we journey, that's the one we use. And I was like, interesting. So in honor of Mikey, the song you're hearing is called It's the last track on the album. It's very, very simple, sort of a meditation, something that came out 8 years ago. So if you want to check that out, that's at music.eastforest.org, or just go to eastforest.org and hit the music tab. All right, folks, give us a review, give us some love, keep listening, keep walking your walk, keep coming to live shows, keep just being you, because you are you and we need you. You are needed. Don't take any shit, but if you do, do it with grace.